I've been married to my wife for 4 years now. We're still relatively new to marriage, but we dated for 2 years before tying the knot. Our relationship appeared strong with no signs of trouble. Our love was genuine and we'd built a foundation of trust during our courtship. I'm 30 years old and she's 26. The incident that brought my wife's cheating to light occurred on July 4th during a party organized by my wife's friend. Let me give you a bit of context before delving into the incident itself. About a week before July 4th, my wife had mentioned that her close friend wanted us to join her July 4th celebration. We usually have a reliable babysitter for our 3-year-old, and we usually inform the sitter in advance about our babysitting needs. Leading up to this specific 4th of July event, my wife informed me that she had contacted the babysitter, who mentioned her schedule would be packed and she couldn't make it. I was a bit disappointed because spending time with my wife had become rarer since we had our baby. My wife expressed her strong desire to attend the event and suggested that I stay home with our child while she goes to her friend's party. I wanted her to have fun, so I agreed and said I'd take care of our child at home. Now here's the twist. My wife knew I wasn't exactly a big fan of her friend. Her friend is still single, and while my wife is 26 years old, her friend is 3 years younger and a bit more carefree. I don't want to come across as controlling, especially since my wife is an adult. I simply advise her to watch out for her friend because she might not be the best influence. Now on the morning of July 4th, I took an unusual step and decided to call the babysitter myself. Normally, my wife handles these arrangements, and I had to find the sitter's number on my wife's phone. My thinking was that if I offered the babysitter a higher hourly rate, she might change her mind and agree to take care of my child that evening. If it works out, I plan to surprise my wife and let her know we could go to the event together after all. I wanted to share the news with her once I had the babysitter's situation sorted out and enjoy the satisfaction of pulling off a last-minute miracle. Things started to unravel when I called the babysitter and asked her to reconsider sitting for my son that evening, even though she had initially declined. She appeared surprised when I used the word reconsider and told me it was the first time I had asked her about that day. Her surprise caught me off guard too, and I inquired if she remembered my wife calling her to arrange the evening a week earlier. She confirmed she hadn't received any call from my wife. I quickly improvised and told her that my wife had actually called a family member instead. That's when it became clear to me that my wife had lied for some reason, although I couldn't figure out why. It was definitely a cause for concern. I arranged for the sitter to come to our house at 10 p.m., and my wife mentioned she would be leaving around 8 p.m. for the event. Before ending the call with the sitter, I made sure to tell her not to inform my wife about her coming over. I explained that I wanted to surprise my wife and keep the outing I had planned a secret. I almost stumbled over my words when the sitter reminded me that I had mentioned my wife's earlier attempt to secure the date and time. I managed to cover it up by saying that we both thought the date night might have been canceled, but since she was on board, it would still be a nice surprise. As scheduled, my wife left around 8 p.m. I waited patiently for the sitter, who arrived on time. Once she was there, I headed to the party my wife had mentioned. Honestly, I had a suspicion that she might not show up and go somewhere else instead, but to my surprise, she was indeed at the party. Her friend greeted me as I arrived. Seeing me there surprised her, and she quickly called my wife over. It's an understatement to say she was just shocked. Her reaction was more like utter disbelief. It had only been around 3 hours since my wife left home, but she already seemed quite intoxicated. Her eyes were bloodshot, and her reception towards me was chilly. She repeatedly asked why I was there and who was taking care of our child. I reassured her that I had the babysitter situation under control and that she shouldn't worry. I just wanted us to enjoy the evening together and watch the fireworks display. The party itself was in a medium-sized setting, with maybe 15 to 20 people squeezed into the house. One thing that stood out to me, though, was the gender ratio. There were noticeably more guys than girls, almost like a 2-to-1 ratio. We managed to move past the awkward initial interaction, but that still didn't explain why my wife had been deceptive about the outing. The events seemed to revolve around a game night, with a focus on playing truth or dare games. I overheard one of the guys suggesting they get back to the game. I decided it was time to catch up on what I had missed, and joined in with the friendly group of guys. These were the ones who were quite talkative, either due to the drinks flowing or just their outgoing personalities. Amidst the gathering, my wife's behavior became agitated and uneasy, and she expressed her desire to leave and go home. Her sudden request to leave raised a red flag for me, suggesting that she was definitely hiding something. I assured her we could head home, but I asked for a moment to try some of the drinks since I had just arrived. I headed to the kitchen and struck up a conversation with one of the guys there. After introducing myself to a random guy, I inquired if he was enjoying the party. He introduced himself as well and confirmed that he was indeed having a good time. I told him I was interested in making a move on one of the girls at the party, but I wasn't sure who was available. I began pointing to the different girls one by one, and he helped me identify who was already in a relationship and who seemed open to approach. Using this approach, I eventually pointed to my wife without revealing her identity to the stranger. I then asked him what he thought about her. He mentioned that my wife was attractive, but he warned me that she was off limits because she arrived with a guy he knew as a friend. I pretended to be interested and asked him to share more details about this guy. The stranger went on to give me information about my wife's affair partner, explaining that they had met at a concert and had been involved with each other intimately since then. This revelation really hit me hard. The timeline of when my wife attended the concert and met this guy matched up perfectly. This struck a chord because I was also present at that very same concert. What bothered me was the fact that I was with her most of the time during the event, except when she wanted to get some snacks and insisted on going alone. I recall that it took her an unusually long time to return with her snacks, but I brushed it off, assuming there was a long line or she needed to use the restroom. This incident happened about a month prior, and ever since then, she had been frequently leaving the house and even had a trip out of town. This new information left me questioning everything. The stranger was bragging about my wife as if she were some kind of prize he'd won for his friend. He kept on talking, sharing a few more details. He explained that he had come to the party to pursue my wife's friend, whom he described as a free spirit. I wasn't sure if my reaction was noticeable, but I couldn't fake it anymore. Just then, my wife's friend joined the conversation, possibly realizing that my questions were leading to the truth about my wife's affair. However, it was too late, and I could tell that she was also part of the deception. I excused myself from the conversation, but asked my wife's friend about my wife's whereabouts. She suggested checking the patio, and that's where I found my wife talking to the guy. It seemed like they were either having a heated discussion or she was trying to convince him of something. I approached them and introduced myself to the man who was involved with my wife. But before I could say anything to him, my wife hastily pulled me away, insisting that we should leave the party. I swatted her hand away with anger and told her she could leave because I wanted to have a talk with a man. I confronted him directly, introducing myself as her husband. I asked him straightforwardly if he knew my wife was married before getting involved with her, considering I had already discovered the truth about their relationship. I have a somewhat imposing presence that I use to my advantage in confrontations. Honestly, I wasn't looking to fight him if he genuinely didn't know she was married. My little show of subtle aggression was meant to let my wife know that I had uncovered her infidelity and to unsettle the guy a bit. I repeated my question to him, making it clear that I didn't want to ruin the party by starting a brawl, but I needed to know if he was aware of my wife's marital status before getting involved with her. My wife was getting anxious and tried to hold me back while apologizing. The guy, seeing the bottle in my hand and realizing he was cornered on the patio with no support, fell for my act and started apologizing as well. He mentioned that he didn't intend to cause any trouble and that he had only started talking to my wife without knowing she was married. I inquired about the number of times they had been together, and he gave a response. I simply wished him a good night and walked away. I hopped in my car and drove back home. I told my wife that I wanted a divorce. I checked into a hotel where I'm writing down my story as a form of self-therapy. I'm feeling lost about what steps to take. This is my first experience with divorce, and I'm completely unfamiliar with co-parenting since I didn't grow up in a household like that. What I do know is that I can't bear the thought of seeing that woman, and this incident is making me physically sick. I'll probably provide updates on what my next moves will be, but for now, I'm truly uncertain. Now for the top comment. Glad OP told her before leaving that he's divorcing her, and I would also tell her that I'm also going to DNA test the child, and he's not mine. I'm going to make her regret ever meeting me. Thank you for listening to the story to the end, and if you like it, please support us with a like as well as subscribe to the channel. Write in the comments section what you think about the story.